Hello everyone, I'm Xiao Su. We have finally come out with the preview of the World Championship that everyone is thinking about. In this issue, we will mainly analyze the 4 seeded teams of LPL's biggest opponent, LCK, Gen, T1, DK, DRX, and the wild card region worth mentioning. Let's begin. LCK has a super first gear team in the same way. In the summer finals, Gen won the summer championship with a 3-0 almost crushing method. Gen has 18 runners-up, and finally got his wish to win the LCK. Interestingly, Gen and T1 maintained the same lineup, but the record in the spring and summer was a bit reversed. Of course there are some problems with player status, but the most important thing is the change of version. After the durability in Drake's version were updated, the game duration began to get longer. Now, Gen, which has the shortest average game time in the LCK, has an average time of 31 minutes, which is almost the same as the team with the longest average game time during the MSI. The longer game duration naturally leads to more teamfights in the later stage, and the importance of AD carry and mid-lane carry begins to increase, which may not be so obvious in mid-laners who occasionally choose champions like Galio and Ryze. But in AD carry, which ensures the team's ability to continuously create damage, it is especially obvious. It can almost be said that the better the AD state, the farther the team can go. This is reflected in the LPL team. Ruler is a player with very strong personal strength, and it is also the key to Gen's improvement in the summer game. In the summer game, the average damage and average economy of the Ruler are both ranked first in the AD of the LCK. In addition to personal reasons, the focus of all aspects of the team is also very important. The first is the focus on BP. Ruler has a very high status in the team. During the entire playoffs, Gen, regardless of the red side or the blue side, the first pick must be the bottom lane. Support lanes will basically only choose more protective support champion. Among the top heroes used the most this season, except for Alchemy, all are protective champions. Even in the Game 3 against KT, the version priority is relatively high. When several protection champions were banned, he also chose Soraka against the meta. In particular, Yuumi, the top protective assistant in the food chain, has improved Gen even more. In the 10 games in which Lehens picked the Yuumi, Gen has not lost a single game, and in the 2 recent small games that Gen has lost, Lehens is playing a support that is off the team. The second is the emphasis on the team's play style. It can be seen that the entire Gen team still takes care of the bottom half, although Peanut itself does not have many top-to-bottom opening routes in the jungle. In the 7 games of the playoffs, only 4 rounds are top-down brushing. This is Peanut's own style. He prefers to do things in the early stage. Therefore, Gen has the highest first blood rate in the LCK, so the route will not be very fixed. There are also many games where Peanut first helps the top to catch up and then goes up from the middle to help the bottom. A typical example is the second game between Gen and LSB in the playoffs. LSB has already placed wards on the upper river and triangle grass, but the monkeys used W to get down from the barren pit and stick to the wall to surround the quick crab's field of vision. Gank successfully hit the road. As a result, Ornn recalled directly to the bottom lane after reaching level 6, helping the bottom lane to establish an advantage. This style of play not only ensures that Peanut can play freely, but also takes into account the bottom half. In the same way, this version is also very suitable for Chovy. The game is not only longer, but in the Shakespeare style of LCK, there are rarely scenes of killing each other. We also compare the LCK playoffs and LPL statistics here. Compared with the bloody level of the playoffs, the gap is still quite obvious. If you don't fight, the economy can only come from minions and jungles. The competition is more about the player's personal development ability, which is what Chovy is good at. On the list of points average complements that best proves the player's developmental ability, the top 10 of the lock are almost all AD and junglers. Chovy, as a mid laner, can still rank second. You know, Chovy has been playing not only growth champions like Azir this season, but Ahri and Sylas are also his specialty. These champions are not so well developed, but he still won the first place in the middle and the second in all positions. Together with Ruler, he ranks first in the mid lane and AD position, respectively. It should be known that the 2 highest points of carry in the LPL summer split are the average of SMLZ's 10.5 and Scout's 9.2. The blood level of the 2 major competitions is indeed different, but it also means that it is difficult to completely defeat Gen if you just wait for the team fight. As long as they are given time to develop, they can get good equipment, and then use strong team fights to defeat their opponents. This is a point that LPL teams need to pay attention to when they face Gen in the future. Doran's top laner level is not that strong among professional players, maybe even relatively poor. However, the overall trend of top laners in this version can cover up the shortcomings of basic skills. Even if the opponent can choose Fiona or Aatrox to play an advantage, Ornn may not necessarily give the team a big gain. Besides, the average top laner might not necessarily be able to suppress Doran's Ornn. At the same time, Doran has really implemented safety development in place, and the average death per game is indeed the least among the units in the LCK. Unlike the format of the LPL playoffs, ADs like Zeali and Sivir are not very good for junglers. When the bottom road stabilizes and develops, LPL will be more inclined to open the rhythm in a way that helps the top road. The most typical is the BO5 of the winner group JDG against TES. 369 can be said to have suppressed Wayward from beginning to end, so when facing GNG in the future, you can really try to tear the opening from the top. The opposite of Gen is T1. It can be said that T1 is still playing the old way of MSI. Focus on the Rift Herald in the early game, destroy turrets and rush barons in the middle. This set of processes has been mentioned many times in the two-phase T1 analysis we did before MSI. This season, T1 is still the same, with the highest the Rift Herald control rate in the summer split, and the Drake's control rate in the middle of the league. Even in the playoffs, where protective supports are rampant, Kyria will still use a lot of supports that are good at taking chances to help team. Judging from the data of the playoffs, T1 who got this lineup generally played very well at the beginning, especially the first blood rate of 87.5%, which is the only one in the playoffs. Even in the final 3 o'clock by Gen, T1 can often get the advantage one step ahead. The problem is that even if T1 has an early advantage, they can't continue to expand this advantage to threaten the opponent's first turret. In the entire playoffs, T1 did not do it once. In the previous version, the Rift Herald was released to feed the bot lane, and the large troops followed the bot lane. But in this version, several ADs don't have particularly good means of self-protection, unlike Ezreal and Xayah in the MSI period, and the casting of Ahri in Wei is increasing, and it is not very good after changing lanes. Press in front of the opposite turret. At the same time, the way of feeding Zeus is not very good, like before giving the Rift Herald to the top lane. In fact, Zeus's strength has not declined too much. When he played against Doran, he was basically able to play the lane pressure. However, Zeus's proficiency with some blue-collar champions is not high. For example, in the third game between Gen and T1's selection of Mordekaiser for Zeus did not play a role. Take the first game between T1 and Gen as an example. First release the Rift Herald in mid lane, and then kill Chovy. The health of the mid turret is already in jeopardy. Knowing that Gen is going to fight Drake, T1's jungler and support can completely lean towards the mid lane, first help Sivir to remove the mid turret, and then go to destroy the top turret together, and even bring the second the Rift Herald threats to high ground are possible. T1's choice is to kill Aatrox first. If there is no problem with Doran's operation, it is estimated that there is a chance to kill one. Then jungler and support went to get Rift Herald, Ahri went to push that top lane, but Aatrox had TP, Sivir in the mid has been pressed under the turret by Zeali, and cannot threaten Gen's mid turret. Ornn is even less likely to defend the bot turret alone, but Gen gets the bot turret first. It seems that T1 is indeed the more active side on the field, but the intensity of the attack is far from enough. Gen paid only a small financial price to get 2 Drakes. In the previous game, T1 gave up Drake, and could win the team battle with a large enough economic lead in the early stage. Now that the economic gap is not big, and the version of Drake's attributes has been enhanced, the team battles in the later stage of T1 are even more sluggish. If there is still no major change in T1 coming to the World Championship, it will still be the same old style of play. We have already defeated T1 once at MSI. If T1 wants to go further on the world stage, we have to see if T1 can complete a few more sets of tactics during this period. DK has entered the World Championship for 4 years in a row. Even if the state of the players fluctuates, in the big environment of LCK, it gives people the feeling that as long as there are showmakers and canyons, they can go to the World Championships. I believe that all the viewers are wondering why Coach DK would replace Nuguri after winning a game in the bubbling match against LSB. In exchange, Bertel was also not disappointed and was killed by Dove in a matchup, ruining the good game. Dini, DK's supervisor, explained this. If there is some truth to the previous explanation, then in another interview about the advantages of the 2 top laners, Dini's answer is even more outrageous. Nuguri in the bubble tournament seems to be slowly regaining his 20-year championship winning state. Facing Dove, an old teammate who used to be in IGS and who is now a top laner, he performed very well. He scored a record of October 1st 16 in 3 games. In an interview, he also said that, "I feel that my ability to control emotional stability has improved a lot. I believe that anyone who has heard the voice of the FPX team for 21 years has felt how autistic Nuguri was at that time." And this bubbling match, not only did DK get the tickets for the World Championship but more importantly, Nuguri regained his confidence. His years DK, the overall competitiveness may not be as good as previous years in the eyes of many people, but the gradually growing bot lane duo gave us a lot of surprises in the second half of the season. Especially their trick ability is unique. Yasuo, the new champion Nella, Heimerdinger and Senna in the bottom lane, I am very much looking forward to them encountering DFM at the World Championship. Let's see who is the real great inventor. On trickery, Showmaker also has something to say. I think the reason why DK is so stable is that it has entered Worlds for 4 years in a row. This is inseparable from the comprehensiveness and version adaptability of Showmaker and Canyon. Maybe in the impression of many people, Canyon is just an excellent jungler, but in fact, his role in teamfights is just as good. The same is true of Showmaker. He can not only take on the heavy responsibility of dealing damage, but also give up development time to find opportunities when the team needs him. In the 4th game between DK and LSB, Showmaker didn't even take a minion for 2 minutes and kept hiding in the LSB red buff area. Until LSB couldn't hold back to Drake, Showmaker finally appeared to steal Ornn's ultimate skill and help DK win this wave of Earth Drake. Before this bubbling match, LSB, the biggest dark horse of the season, maintained a 100% record against DRX. 2-2-1 in the summer split and 3-1 DRX in the first round of the playoffs. It can be said that there is a little restraint. But we should never underestimate the heart of a champion. DEFT, who is about to turn 26 at the World Championships this year, may be his last chance. Everyone wants him to go to Worlds again and LSB is no exception. In fact, after DRX entered version 12.14, there was a downturn for a long time. The main problem is that the starting jungler Pyosic has very low proficiency with the tool jungler. Only 3 games were won in 12 small games. DRX replaced Juan as a substitute jungler when KT was cornered in the playoffs. After Juan came on stage, there can only be 2 words to describe it, that is, immediate results. His appearance made the rest of DRX play very comfortable. Beryl no longer has to get lost on the road for the rhythm of the team. Choosing a protective support in the bottom lane to ensure the development of DEFT is the way to win for DRX. But after all, the DRX bubble tournament faced LSB who defeated him 3 times in a row. No one expected that Prince, who boasted for a season, was beaten home by DEFT like this. The single defect of LSB's tactics makes them show their true colors as soon as they hit the middle field in the high-intensity confrontation of the playoffs and bubbling games. Although DEFT's operational response has declined, it can still hand over the league's first damage conversion rate of 1.44, which is thanks to Beryl's protection. In the life and death game against the LSB bubbling match, Beryl's red team chose Soraka as the last choice, and under the condition that DEFT took all the damage, he was abruptly healed. Anxious LSB forcibly killed Beryl many times, but also fell into DRX's arms. The developed DEFT dealt damage without pressure, cleaned up the battlefield, and won the last LCK ticket to the World Championship. Although TES is the 2nd seed of the LPL, in the regular season, TES ranks 1st in the league, and the LPL is the only division that is not 3-0 in the final. The strength of TES is almost the same as that of number 1 seed JDG. The dominance of TES can be seen from the map resource control data. In the regular season, the Baron control rate was the 1st, and the Drake control rate was the 2nd. From the regular season to the first half of the playoffs, TES played almost the same way. Generally, it mainly focused on the bottom half, using the advantages of the bottom half to get Drake, and ending the game by Drake team battles and quickly getting the Dragon Soul. Why is TES's offense in the bot lane so smooth? TES has 2 points that are better than others. First, Tien, the core of the attack and the initiator of the team battle, has a very strange development path. He pays great attention to hiding his position in the jungle and launches attacks at unconventional time points. Has a 100% first blood rate in the regular season. Second, TS's carry state is very good, with LPL's top laning level. This means that Knight can use his strength to push the lane and help the bot lane with the jungler. JackeyLove can not only master various AD heroes, but also select Draven that other ADs don't use very much. His laning ability is also good, and he can also use the advantages of the bot lane to help the jungler and control map resources. These three important reasons allow TES to do a good job in the bottom half of the offense most of the time. Knight and JackeyLove frequently played wonderful carry games in teamfights. However, entering the playoffs, the version changes have increased the blood volume of the drakes, which is not suitable for obtaining the first drake at an early time. Therefore, teams like JDG made adjustments and gave up the early drakes to help the road. TES obviously suffered a lot and was put into the loser bracket, but TES made a very big adjustment after the first round defeat. Usually TES likes the red side very much, and uses the counter position to limit the opponent's play. However, in the final stage, TES has been choosing the blue side, trying to cause trouble for JDG's BP. Then increase Azir's priority and ban him without a chance to choose. Then, looking at the whole BP, TES has higher proficiency in Poppy than Cannavy through Tien, and the strategy of using ban to target Cannavy is very successful. In the journey of the loser group, TES also strengthened the care of the top lane. Wayward has tried to use some characters that need to be played to an advantage. Although they lost to JDG in the finals, the overall situation of TES is very good. Even if they are the second seed of the LPL, they are the highest combat power of the LPL. Regarding RNG, I believe many viewers have these two doubts. 1. Why did the MSI winning RNG have a sharp decline in the final stage of the season? What happened during this period? 2. What made RNG get the last LPL World Championship ticket at the last minute of the bubble tournament? Now let me take you to review the summer of RNG. A very intuitive data is that RNG's first blood rate dropped from the 4th in the league in the spring game to the 13th in the league in the summer game. We can also see from the game that this is obviously a problem with RNG's rhythm. Taking the 12.14 version as the watershed, before that RNG's play style of seizing opportunities to find a rhythm has been very effective. Nautilus and Fuego are the best representatives. Even if the opponent chooses Braum first, and then RNG chooses Nautilus, the landing will be countered, RNG still wins the Titan decisively. Even if he sacrifices the landing, he must use the familiar opportunity to find the rhythm. However, after the version update, RNG's single play style and slow adjustment speed made them slump in the final stage of the season. The version's strong protective support does not meet the needs of RNG's old tactics. WEI's adaptation speed to the new version is also slower than the jungler of the top 3 seed teams. After the jungler and support were misfired, Xiaohu also fell into a period of confusion for a long time. He played timidly, but the opponent always caught the opportunity to kill first. Many people may think that the replacement of RNG's top laner from Bin to Breathe will be a nerf, and some people think that the newly added players need a certain amount of running in time with the team. But Brother Breath broke all doubts with practical actions. Breathe in the summer split did not lose to Bin in the spring split at all, and even took the lead. Many of the pictures we see are just differences in personal style of play. In the third round of the playoffs, RNG played against EDG, which was gradually recovering. This series completely exposed all of RNG's problems. Almost every line was opened by EDG. After this game is over, it can be said that the pressure of public opinion about RNG reached the top. Fortunately, the schedule gave RNG enough time to adjust. After resting for 12 days of RNG, they slowly found a little sense of winning the game in version 12.15. Even though the first round of the qualifying round was eventually pushed by EDG, but at least it can be seen that they are expanding the hero pool and lineup system to increase the diversity of tactical play. When it came to the last game ticket battle between RNG and LNG, RNG lost 2 consecutive games after 2 consecutive games, and the game entered the tiebreaker again. The assistants who went to the World Championships this year are all surnamed M, missing, Mark, Mako, only Ming is missing. RNG is once again standing on the edge of the cliff. At that time, many viewers wondered if RNG was going to repeat the same mistakes, but Breath caught Aile's mistakes and helped RNG win the World Championship by relying on the operation. After the 12.15 version, RNG is still a very exciting team in this year's World Championship. The first to start the play-in will also allow them to adapt to the World Championship version in advance. The World Championship is about whoever has the best learning ability, whoever makes the fastest progress, and whoever plays first and understands the answer to the version. RNG must not take it lightly. When it comes to BYG, many people will remember that it was the team that was dragged and self-destructed after a wave of good brothers in S11. This year, they replaced the mid laner and AD, and they refused to let the two chase the three in the PCS loser group final, which made PSG miss the World Finals for the first time since its establishment. However, BYG was beaten 3 o'clock by the league's upstart CFO in the final, and the state it showed made fans in Taiwan province very uneasy. After all, they have to face teams like RNG, DRX, and FNC in the play-ins this year, and the difficulty is comparable to MSI. The CFO who won the PCS Summer Championship this year, although it is a new team just established this year, is an elderly team with an average age of 25 years old. The mid laner and support are both 95-year veterans. Their team division of labor is very clear, that is, the old man leads the newcomer, the mid, the jungler and the support do their duty, and assist the carry on the top and bot lane. The top laner, Rest, has strong landing pressure, but has poor discipline. However, the 3 games against BYG in the final were relatively stable, and in the second game, he played a 1 vs 2 highlight operation under the tower. What's interesting is that this year's CFO won the championship, but J-Team was eliminated early, and Rest was a player that J-Team didn't want before, and he started teasing his old club directly after winning the championship.
然后最感谢的还是上一家战队把我放出去，真的很感动，都快流眼泪了。
The AD CFO had 2 players, and the younger Shun went to the final. He is the only player in PCS who can play Draven, and he dares to fight. If he plays well at the World Championships this year, he may become the next doggo. Generally speaking, CFO is a difficult team to go far, and their age and hero pool limit them a lot. When the mid laner mission faces the mid laners of other teams in the group stage, it is difficult not to become a breakthrough, and a win is considered a success. In the summer finals of the Vietnam division that ended on September 4th, GM avenged SGB who defeated them in the upper bracket with a 3 o'clock crush, and won the summer championship. The 2 teams will represent the VCS division in the S12 World Championship. GAM was unable to participate in the World Championship last year due to the epidemic. After a long absence from the international arena, how strong they are is very exciting. Looking at the entire VCS summer split and playoffs, the Vietnamese team's style of play is still the most cranky on the planet. The entire PCS division is pursuing the ultimate offense, and both the lineup selection and the style of play continue the tradition of Vietnamese bandits. The bloody level of the summer game approaching 1 has only dropped by 0.04 after entering the postseason playoff version of fighting the group. Compared with the LPL's 0.77 and the LCK's 0.71, it can only be said that the Vietnamese interpret what is called just fight it. It's hard to imagine that they didn't even average 30 minutes per game in the playoffs. Hero selection is also dominated by those who are strong in the early stage and have strong rhythm driving ability. In a bot lane AD version like 12.15, their bot lane choices are not as uniform as Zealy vs Sivir like the LPL. As the number 1 seed, GAM can always come up with their own version of the answer, like Varus and Jinx are their AD Sty 1E's forte. And a controlling role like Trund is very mediocre in Vietnam. They prefer to use jungler Pantheon, mid laner Galio, and support Ashe, heroes that are not common in other regions, but are particularly useful in their homeland. It is worth mentioning that GAM's mid laner Katie is best at being a mid lane development master, which is the core that GAM relies on most in the late stage. But choosing a developmental role in the VCS competition area has to pay a corresponding price. In the second game between GAM and SGB in the final, Katie's Victor was killed 3 times in a row by Saigon Buffalo in 8 minutes of the landing period. And the reason why GM can beat SGB to win the number 1 seed of VCS, the soul of the team, Levi, has contributed. Although Levi was targeted by the opponent in the BP in the final, he could still choose Lee Sin and Nightmare to help GM stabilize the early stage and hand over the baton of victory to carry in the later stage. On the other hand, the Saigon Buffaloes, who defeated T1 bot lane and beat G2 at MSI, have grown a lot through the baptism of MSI. Although they lost in the summer finals, the victory lies in the fact that the players are young guys with strong learning ability and unlimited potential. I look forward to their performance in the play-in competition. The unique style of play and tough game style have always been the hallmarks of the VCS division, and LPL teams still have to be careful about their explosive power in the BO1. But for the Vietnam team, the immediate visa issue is their biggest headache at the moment. Both teams' first visa applications were rejected by the US Embassy, but they still have a chance to get a US visa. According to the rules, they have to wait another 14 days before they can reapply for their visas, which means they will have to wait until September 24th to know if GAM and SGB will be able to participate in the 2022 Global Finals. Another 3 o'clock, except for the LPL, every region is at 3 o'clock. DFM in the playoffs is still the winner of that region, clinching their third ticket to Worlds cleanly. When it comes to DFM, we have to say their top team Sol Evi. He and Jungler Steel have been with DFM since 2017. In the 3 games against SG in the final, he used 3 top lane heroes, Lilia, Tryndamere, Mordekaiser, that are not very common in the LPL, and is a veritable old captain. This year's DFM introduced the Koreanated mid laner Yahoo. The Korean jungler Steel, who has been in Japan for more than 4 years, has also turned into a local player. With the help of the Koreanated Harp, DFM has officially launched a complete lineup of 3 Koreanades, which is likely to become a history. The strongest wild card team ever. I don't know how many viewers still remember the story of DFM's beating C9 last year and the group's first qualifying story. Since then, Japanese people's enthusiasm for esports has grown. The scene of this summer's finals obviously feels that the audience has increased. This preview will show you the LCK division and the wildcard division. How should I put it? I hope Doran will be an undercover agent again, and the wildcard team can play more exciting games. Optimism returns to optimism. In the world competition, who is making faster progress, LPL must not take it lightly. The next preview will also take you to see the situation of European and American teams.